Leora Prescott drove the shovel into the fresh mound of dirt, her blistered palms slick with blood. "Pa, I swear on your bones I ain't losing this land." A horse whinnied behind her. She spun shovel raised like a weapon. A rain-soaked stranger sat on a gray mare at the edge of her property watching her grieve. Before we go further, hit that subscribe button if you love stories about women who refuse to bow. Drop the name of your town in the comments below so I can see how far this story travels tonight. Stay with me till the very end, because what happens next will break your heart before it mends it back together. You take one more step onto this property, mister, and I'll split your skull open. Leora's voice did not shake. She was proud of that. Inside her heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack a rib, but her voice came out flat and mean as a rattlesnake in August. The stranger did not move. He sat there in the saddle rain dripping off the brim of his hat, watching her with eyes she could not read. "Ma'am," he said, low voice, steady. "I mean you no harm." Every man who ever meant harm started with them exact words. A long silence. "Reckon that's fair." She did not lower the shovel. "State your business or turn that horse around." He shifted slightly in the saddle, and she saw it then, his left arm cradled against his chest, the sleeve dark with something that was not rain. "Name's Juan Boone. My horse threw a shoe about 6 miles back, and I got caught in the weather. I saw the smoke from your stack. I was hoping to trade for shelter till the storm blows out. Got pelts, beaver, fox, good ones." "I don't need pelts, Mr. Boone. I need you off my land." "Understood." But he did not move. "What are you waiting for? For you to lower that shovel, ma'am. I'd rather not turn my back on it." A strange, bitter sound came out of her throat. It might have been a laugh once. "You're a funny man." "No, ma'am, I'm a tired one." Leora studied him, the arm, the way he sat a little too straight like a man bracing against pain he would not name out loud. The mare a good animal lathered and blown clean through. He had not been riding easy. He had been riding hard, and he had been hurt doing it. She lowered the shovel. Not all the way, just enough. "There's a lean-to by the barn. You can put the horse up there. Oats in the bin if she needs them. You do not come near the house. You do not come near the well. You sleep in the lean-to, and you ride out at first light." "Yes, ma'am." "And Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "I sleep with a Sharps rifle across my chest. I don't sleep deep and I don't miss." He tipped his hat. Water ran off it in a little silver stream. "I reckon you don't miss Prescott." She went cold all over. "How do you know my name?" He went very still. "I didn't say I did." "You did. Just now. You said Miss Prescott." A pause. Longer than the first one. The rain came harder. "I knew your pa, ma'am." And Leora sat in her pa's chair by the cold stove that night and could not make her hands stop trembling. She set the rifle across her knees, and she stared at the door, and she listened for any sound of a man coming up from the lean-to. No sound came. Only the rain. Only the wind climbing the stovepipe and rattling the tin. Knew your pa. She had not spoken to another living soul in 14 days. 14 days since the morning she had walked out to the north field and found him face down in the hay, one hand closed around a stalk of timothy like he had reached for something green at the very last. The doctor had ridden out from town 3 hours there, 3 hours back, and charged her $1.50 for the privilege. He had said it was his heart. He had said it was quick. He had said she ought to think about selling the place and going back east to her mother's people. She had no people. Her mother's family were Pennsylvania Quakers who had cut her mother off 30 years ago for marrying a Catholic drifter named Prescott, and they would no more take Leora in than they would take in a stray mule. Her pa was the only blood she had in this world. She had buried him in the back pasture under the cottonwood, because that was where he had always eaten his noon meal. She had dug the grave herself, because she could not afford the undertaker. She had held the service alone, because the nearest preacher was 40 miles off, and had sent word he did not come out for Catholics. And now a man she had never seen in her life had ridden up out of the rain and called her by her name, and said he knew her pa. She thought about going down to the lean-to and asking him what he meant by it. She did not go. Morning, she told herself. Morning, when there is light and when I can see his hands. She did not sleep. She was at the window before the first gray had bled into the sky rifle in her lap, watching the lean-to. No smoke from the stovepipe down there, because she had not offered him a single splinter of wood. She wondered meanly if he had frozen. She wondered if she would care. Her pa would have cared. Her pa would have brought the man up to the stove and fed him coffee, and asked him 3 kinds of questions, and found out his whole life story before sunup. Her pa had been soft that way. It was why the Hartleys had been able to do what they had done to him. She pushed the thought away. She did not want to think about the Hartleys this morning. She did not want to think about the note the bank had nailed to her door last Tuesday. She did not want to think about the fact that she had 41 days to produce $212, or the land would go to public sale, and that she did not have 212 cents to her name. A figure moved by the lean-to. Her hands tightened on the rifle. When Boone came out leading his mare by the bridle, he had a satchel slung over his good shoulder. The bad arm was still tucked against his chest, tied up in some kind of sling he had fashioned probably from his own shirt. He walked over to the yard pump, and he worked the handle one-handed careful, and he rinsed his face, and he drank from his cupped palm. He did not look at the house once. He did not come near the house. He went back to the lean-to, and he came back out with a small bundle, and he crossed the yard, and he set the bundle on the top step of her porch. And then he turned and walked back without a word, without knocking, without calling out. Leora watched him go. Then she got up. She kept the rifle in one hand, and she eased open the door, and she looked at the bundle on her step. 3 pelts, fox beaver, rolled tight and tied off with a thong, and on top of them a small brass button. She picked up the button. Her breath stopped. It was her pa's. It was the button off her pa's good coat, the one he had worn exactly twice in his whole life. Once to her mother's funeral, and once to sell the bay mare in the spring of '79, because he had needed to look respectable to get a fair price. She knew that button. She had sewn it back on twice. The last time she had used green thread because she had been out of black. The green thread was still on it. She stood on the porch with the rifle in one hand and the button in the other, and she could not move. The wind came up and ruffled the edge of the fox pelt on the step. Somewhere in the pasture, a meadowlark did not know that anything was wrong and sang. Leora walked down the steps and across the yard. The rifle hung slack in her left hand. The button was hot in her right. She stopped 10 feet from the lean-to. Mr. Boone, he came to the doorway. He had his hat in his hand out of respect, and he was paler than he had been the night before, and the bad arm looked worse. Ma'am. She held up the button. Where did you get this? Ma'am. Where? A long breath. He looked at the button. He looked at her. He looked at the ground, and then back up, and his eyes had something in them that she could not name, and it scared her worse than anything that had happened yet. He gave it to me, Miss Prescott, about 4 months back in a town called Sweetgrass, up past the Milk River country. He said if I ever made it south, I was to give it to his daughter, and to tell her that he was sorry. Sorry. Yes, ma'am. Sorry for what? He didn't say. You rode all this way to give a dying man's daughter a button, and you don't even know what for. He wasn't dying when I saw him, ma'am. He was on his feet. He was working a timber camp with me. He said he was going home soon as he had the money. Leora felt the ground tilt. That can't be. Ma'am. My pa didn't ever leave this homestead. My pa was here. He died in that north field 2 weeks ago, Mr. Boone. I buried him with these hands. Juan Boone went very still. That can't be right. I know my own father. Miss Prescott. I rode with Jeremiah Prescott for 6 weeks in the spring. I knew his laugh. I knew the little scar on his left hand from a bullwhacker's stroke in Nebraska in '74. He told me that story twice. I sat up nights listening to him talk about his Leora and the quarter section in Montana and the cottonwood in the back pasture, and he... One stopped. His mouth worked. button off his own coat, and he said, "You ride south when the camp breaks up, and you find her, and you give her this, and you tell her her pa is coming home." "Stop it. He was alive 4 months ago, Miss Prescott." I said, "Stop it. He was alive, and he said he was sorry, and he sent me." Leora dropped the button in the dirt. "My father died in my arms 2 weeks ago," she said, and her voice was shaking now, and she hated it, but she could not stop it. "He never left. He never left this land, not once in my whole life, not once since my mother died. He never went to no timber camp in no Milk River country. He was here. He was right here. You are lying, Mr. Boone, and I want you off my land inside of an hour." One did not argue. He bent down slowly because of the arm, and he picked up the button. He held it out to her, and when she would not take it, he set it on the rail of the lean-to gentle, as if it were a live thing. "Ma'am," he said, "somebody is lying. I'll grant you that much. But I ain't." He started to saddle the mare. Leora turned and walked back toward the house, and she could not tell if the pounding in her ears was her own heart, or a horse coming up the lane, and then she realized it was a horse coming up the lane, and then she realized it was 3 horses, and she looked up and saw them at the gate, and her whole body went cold. The Hartley brothers. All 3. Jim on the roan out front, Cal on the mule behind him, and the youngest Silas on that bad-tempered black stallion that had bitten her paw twice in his life. They were dressed for business. Jim had a rifle laid across the saddle. Leora's hand tightened on her own rifle. She did not turn around. She heard behind her Juan Boone pause in his saddling. "Miss Prescott," he said very quietly, "those friends of yours, they are not my friends, Mr. Boone." "I reckon not. You best ride." "Yes, ma'am." But he did not get on the mare. She heard the soft sound of him setting his satchel back down on the floor of the lean-to. She heard him check something at his right hip. She did not turn to see what. "Leora Prescott," Jim Hartley's voice came across the yard too loud, too pleased with itself. "We come to talk business, girl." "I got no business with you, Mr. Hartley." "Now that ain't true. You got 41 days of business with me in the bank. I come to save you the trouble. Ride off my land." "Your land. Your land, girl." Jim laughed. Cal laughed with him. Silas did not laugh. Silas just watched her with those pale eyes that had never once in his life looked warm. "Girl, that note come due the day your pa went in the ground, and we both know it. You got no claim on this place. I got every claim. Your pa borrowed off my father in '78, and he never paid a nickel back, and when the old man died last fall, that paper come to me. My pa paid that note. He paid it in full in the spring of '79. You got the paper to prove it." She did not answer, because she did not. Her pa had said he had paid it. Her pa had said over supper one night, "Leora, girl, that Hartley business is done, don't you ever worry on it." But she had never seen the paper. She had never seen any paper. She had torn the cabin apart in the days after he died looking, and she had found nothing but old almanacs and a seed catalog from 1881. Jim Hartley smiled. "Didn't think so," he said. He swung a leg over and got down off the roan. "Now, Miss Prescott, I'm a reasonable man. I don't want to see you out in the road. I got a proposition." "I don't want your proposition." "You ain't heard it yet." He started walking toward her. Cal slid down off the mule and followed. Silas stayed mounted, watching. Leora raised the sharps. "That's close enough." Jim Hartley stopped. He put his hands up, mocking gentle. "Now, girl, don't do something you'll regret." "I don't regret much, Mr. Hartley." "You will if you pull that trigger." "Try me." And then from behind her, quiet as a man stepping into church, "Mr. Hartley." When Boone's voice. Jim Hartley's eyes moved past Leora. His face changed. Not much, but it changed. Leora did not turn around. She kept the rifle on Jim, but she saw in the set of Jim Hartley's shoulders that he had seen something behind her that he did not like. "Who the hell are you?" Jim said. "Name's Boone." "Boone." Jim's eyes narrowed. "One Boone. That's right." Cal Hartley behind Jim took a step backward toward the mule. Jim, Cal said. Jim, that's... I know who it is, Cal. Shut your mouth. Silas on the black stallion had gone very still. Leora's hands were steady on the rifle, but her mind was not. Her mind was running in 6 directions at once. Who is this man? Who is this man that these 3 brothers know his name on sight? Who is this man that Cal Hartley just took a step back from? Mr. Hartley, Juan Boone said, and his voice was the same voice from the night before, low and even the voice of a man who had not raised his tone for anything in a long, long time. The lady told you to write off her land. I'd take her word for it. This ain't your business, Boone. Reckon I'm making it mine. Jim Hartley looked at Leora. You know who this man is, Miss Prescott? I know he's got more manners than you. He's a killer girl. Leora's finger did not move off the trigger, but something inside her chest dropped a long way down into the dark. That a fact, she said. He killed 4 men in Bozeman 2 years ago, shot 'em dead in the street. They say he killed his own brother in the Dakota Territory before that. 3 men, Juan Boone said quietly. Not 4. And the man in Dakota wasn't my brother. Nobody said anything. The wind came up and moved across the yard. Jim Hartley very slowly lowered his hands. We'll be back, Miss Prescott, he said, with the sheriff, and with the paper. You do that. And you, Boone. Jim's voice was tight now. You'd best be a long way from this county when we come back. I'll be where I please to be, Mr. Hartley. Jim got back on the roan. Cal got back on the mule. Silas had never gotten down. They turned their horses and they rode back up the lane, and not one of them looked over his shoulder. Leora stood in the yard with the rifle in her hands and her heart trying to come up out of her throat, and she did not lower the gun until the sound of the hooves had been gone a long time. Then she turned around. When Boone stood at the edge of the lean-to with one hand still resting casual as you please on the butt of a revolver she had not seen on him before. He took the hand off when she turned. He let the gun ride in the holster. He looked at her, and his face was tired and sad, and not one bit surprised. Miss Prescott, he said. Is it true? She said. Which part, ma'am? All of it. A long, long silence. Most of it, he said, and Leora Prescott lowered the sharps because her legs would not hold her up anymore, and she sat down right there in the dirt of her own yard with a dead father she had buried, and a living father she had not. With 3 brothers riding back to take her home, and with a killer in her lean-to who had brought her a button off her pa's coat, and said he was sorry. She put her face in her hands. She did not cry. She had not cried in 14 days, and she was not about to start now. She lifted her face and she looked across the yard at Juan Boone, and she said in a voice she hardly recognized as her own, Mister, you are not going anywhere. Not till you tell me every word my father said to you in that camp. Every single word. When Boone took his hat off, he held it against his chest. Yes, ma'am, he said. When Boone sat down on the porch step because his legs would not hold him, he let the hat rest on his knee. His right hand stayed near the holster without meaning to, and Leora noticed, and he saw her notice, and he moved the hand away and folded it over the hat. Start at the beginning, Mr. Boone. Yes, ma'am. And if you lie to me even one time, I will know it. I don't doubt it, Miss Prescott. She sat down across from him on the bottom step. The sharps lay across her lap. She did not set it down. She did not mean to set it down for a long time. March, Juan said. Late March. I come up to a timber camp on the east fork of the Milk River, run by a Dutchman named Van der Linde. I was looking for work that would not ask my name twice. Your pa had been there since January. January. Yes, ma'am. My father was at my supper table in January, Mr. Boone. Ma'am, I am telling you what the man told me. He said he come up the first week of December. He said he rode the stage to Helena and then hired out with a freight train going north. That is not possible. I understand. He never went to Helena. He never hired out with anybody. He was here. He was right here in this kitchen eating salt pork and reading the almanac. not argue. He waited. He had the patient look of a man who had been doubted before and knew better than to push. "What did he look like?" she said at last. "Ma'am, the man who told you he was Jeremiah Prescott. What did he look like?" "Tall, thin, 6 foot or near it, gray hair going white at the temples, blue eyes, hands like yours long-fingered, a scar on the left one from a bullwhacker's stroke in Nebraska." "Stop." "He said you'd know about the scar." I said stop. When stopped. Leora's hands were shaking on the sharps, and she could not make them quit. "Anybody could know about a scar," she said. "Anybody who had sat with him one evening. That doesn't prove it was him." "No, ma'am, it doesn't." "Tell me something only my pa would know." Wan looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked down at his hat. "He said you had a rag doll when you were 6 years old named Philomena, and you lost her in a creek in the Red River country on the way out here. And he spent 2 hours wading down the bank looking for her and never did find her, and you cried yourself sick for 3 nights, and he carved you a little wooden horse to try and make up for it, and you kept it under your pillow until you were 14. Leora's hands stopped shaking. They went still. They went dead. The little wooden horse was in the cedar chest behind her pa's bed. She had put it there last week with his pipe and his shaving razor and the small locket that had her mother's picture in it. She had not told another living soul about that horse since she was a child. She looked at Wan Boone. "Who are you?" she said. "I already told you, ma'am." "No. I mean, who are you? A man who sat up nights with a lonesome old feller who talked about his daughter till he couldn't talk no more, that's all. And he sent you here." "Yes, ma'am." "With a button." "Yes, ma'am." "And an apology." "Yes, ma'am." Leora laid the sharps down on the step beside her. She had not meant to. Her body did it without asking her. She put her hands flat on her knees, and she looked at the dirt of the yard between her boots, and she tried to breathe around the thing that was opening up inside her chest. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "Who is buried in my north pasture?" "I don't know, Miss Prescott. 2 weeks ago, I walked out at sunup to cut hay, and I found a man face down by the fence, and I turned him over, and it was my father's face, and I buried him." "Yes, ma'am." "It was my father's face." "Yes, ma'am. I believe you." "Then how—" "I don't know." She looked up at him. "We have got to open that grave." When Boone's jaw tightened. "Miss Prescott." "I know." "That is not a small thing." "I know it is not a small thing, Mr. Boone. I dug it with these hands. I am aware of how deep it is." "I did not mean the diggin'." "I know what you meant. I am going to do it anyway." He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded slow. "Yes, ma'am. Reckon we are." "We, Mr. Boone." "I will not let a woman open a grave alone, Miss Prescott. I was not raised that poor. Your arm is broke." "My arm is bruised. There is a difference." "It is not bruised. I have been looking at it all morning, and it is worse than bruised." "It will hold a shovel for an hour." "You do not know me, Mr. Boone. You do not owe me this." "I owe your father this, ma'am." "You owe a dead man a shovel." "I owe a man who shared his bread with me when I had nothing a good deal more than a shovel, Miss Prescott." She did not answer that. She got up and she walked to the shed, and she came back with 2 shovels and a lantern, though the sun was high and they would not need it. She had picked up the lantern anyway. She did not know why. Perhaps because she did not want to be out there in the pasture when the light started to go, and wanted the comfort of a thing that could burn. They walked to the cottonwood without speaking. Leora went first. Wen followed half a step behind with the shovels carrying both, because he could only use one arm, and it would not have been right to let her carry her own. At the mound, she stopped. She had made a wooden cross, 2 scraps of fence board tied with baling wire. She had not carved anything on it. She had not known what to carve. She had meant to come back and do it proper when she had the strength. She had not yet had the strength. "Miss Prescott." "Yes." "You do not have to do this right now." "I do, Mr. Boone." "A person can wait a day. Think on it." "I cannot sleep another night not knowin'." He nodded. He pulled the cross up gently and set it aside. They dug. "Gatto Chig." It took longer than she had thought it would because she had buried him deep, because she had not wanted the coyotes to come for him, and because Juan Boone could only work in short turns before the arm would not let him anymore. He did not complain. He did not even breathe hard where she could hear it. But she saw after the first half hour that sweat was running down his face, even in the cool of the morning, and that his color had gone bad. "Sit down, Mr. Boone." "I can go another round." "Sit down." He sat. He was white as a sheet. She dug on alone, and he did not try to stop her. "Miss Prescott?" "Yes." "May I ask you something while you work?" "Ask." "Did your father ever tell you what he'd done in the war?" She stopped digging. "He was not in the war." "Ma'am?" "My father was never in the war. He was in Pennsylvania the whole time. He had a bad lung. They would not take him." A pause. Long pause. "The man I knew, Miss Prescott, had the first battle of Shiloh in his eye every time he talked about April. The man I knew was at Chickamauga. The man I knew watched his captain die of a belly wound under a tree, and he held the hand until it went cold, and he told me about it 4 times when he was drunk." Leora stared at him. "My father never touched whiskey in his life." "Ma'am, the man I knew drank a pint of rye every evening of the world." She felt the blood go out of her face. "Mr. Boone?" "Yes? Are we talking about 2 different men?" "I am beginning to wonder, Miss Prescott." She did not answer. She started digging again faster. Juan got up and took the shovel from her because he could see what was coming up in her, and he could not bear to let her be the one to uncover it. She let him take it. She stood at the edge of the hole with her arms wrapped around herself like a woman standing in a wind. The shovel struck wood. One cleared around the box. He looked up at her. "Miss Prescott?" "Open it." "Ma'am?" "Open it, Mr. Boone. I dug him up. I will look at him." One worked the lid with the edge of the shovel because she had not used nails, because she had not had nails, because she had used pegs and twine, and the lid lifted easy, and Juan got down into the grave on his knees, and he moved it aside. He looked. He did not speak. "Mr. Boone?" "Miss Prescott." "Who is it?" He looked up at her, and the look on his face was not the look of a man who had seen a stranger. The look on his face was the look of a man who had seen a ghost. "Miss Prescott, I do not know how to say this to you." "Say it." "That is the man who told me he was your father." Leora's knees went out. She sat down hard in the dirt at the edge of the grave, and she put one hand down to catch herself, and her hand came down on the wooden cross she had made, and a splinter drove up into her palm, and she did not feel it. "That," she said, "is my father, Mr. Boone. Ma'am, I have looked at that face every day of my life since I was born. That is my father." "Yes, ma'am." "And that is the man you knew in the timber camp?" "Yes, ma'am." "Then my father was in the timber camp." Juan climbed up out of the grave, slowly because of the arm, and slowly also because something had gone out of him, something he had been holding on to all morning, and it took him a long breath to get back on his feet. "Yes, Miss Prescott, I believe he was." "Then my father was not here in January?" "No, ma'am." "Then who?" "Ma'am, then who was sittin' in that chair in January, Mr. Boone, who was eatin' my biscuits, who was readin' the almanac by my stove, who was answerin' to the name of Prescott in my kitchen for the last 5 months of his life, if my father was in a timber camp on the Milk River?" One did not answer, because there was no answer that either of them could say out loud and live with. Leora sat in the dirt, and she put her hands over her mouth, and this time the thing she had been holding back for 14 days came up out of her, and it was not a cry, it was worse than a cry. It was a sound she did not know her own throat could make. When Boone did not touch her, he did not move. He stood at the edge of the grave with his good hand hanging at his side, and he let her have the sound to herself, because he had the sense to know that a woman grieving for a father she had lost twice did not need the weight of any man's pity on top of it. When she could speak, she said, "Cover him." "Yes, ma'am." "Cover him proper." "Yes, ma'am." She got up and she walked back to the house, and she did not look behind her once. He was an hour at the grave. When he came back to the yard, she was sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, she had not touched, and it's open in front of her. The box was full of papers, old letters, receipts, a dried flower from somewhere, a lock of hair tied with a green ribbon, her mother's hair, pale brown from 1858. Wyan stopped in the doorway. He took his hat off. "Come in, Mr. Boone. You are welcome in this house." "Miss Prescott, sit down. There is coffee on the stove. Pour yourself a cup and then come sit." He did. He poured the coffee one-handed, slow, careful, and he came to the table, and he sat across from her, and he waited. "I have been going through his papers," she said. "Yes, ma'am." "I have been looking for the note, the one Jim Hartley says come due." "Have you found it?" "No." "Anything else?" "Yes." She turned a paper toward him. A letter. The handwriting was her father's. She knew it the way a woman knows her own child's voice in a crowd. But the letter was dated October 11th, 1884, 6 months ago. Wen read it. His face did not change much, but it changed some. "He wrote it from Fort Benton," Leora said. "Yes, ma'am. He says he is coming home in the spring. He says he has made near $300 working the timber and that it will be enough to settle with the Hartleys and keep the land. He says he is sorry he went. He says he should not have trusted the man he left in charge." "The man he left in charge?" "Yes." She looked at him. "Mr. Boone, who was the man in my father's chair?" When Boone set down the coffee cup. "Miss Prescott, did your father have a brother?" "No." "A cousin?" "No, no kin." "A man who come through here regular a hired hand?" "No, we never had money for hired hands. Mr. Boone we had ourselves." Juan looked at the letter again. "Ma'am, that man in the grave looked exact like your father. You buried him yourself. You knew that face. If it was not your father, then it was a man made to pass for him, and a man made to pass so close that his own daughter did not know the difference. Nobody could pass for my father to me. Somebody did, Miss Prescott." She did not answer. He turned the letter over. There was more writing on the back. She had not seen it. She had not gotten that far. Her eyes were too tired. He read it. Then he read it again. "Miss Prescott." "What?" "Your father's handwriting changes on this letter." "What do you mean?" "I mean the first half is wrote clean and steady. The second half is scratched out quick like he wrote it on his knee. The ink is different. The pen is different. Let me see." He turned it toward her. She looked. He was right. The first half was neat the way her pa wrote when he was at the kitchen table with his good pen. The second half was a scrawl hurried slanted the letters running downhill. She read the second half out loud. "Do not trust the man at the house. If he says he is me, he is not. I have made a mistake, Leora girl. I have made the mistake of my life. I am comin' home. If I do not, you go to the sheriff in Helena, and you ask him about a man named—" She stopped. "And you ask him about a man named what, Mr. Boone?" Wen looked at the paper. "It is torn, ma'am." "Torn?" "Somebody tore the bottom corner off." She took the letter from his hand. He was right. The corner was gone. Torn clean, the way a man tears a thing in a hurry, the way a man tears a thing because he is afraid someone will read it. "Who opened this letter, Mr. Boone?" "Ma'am. This letter come in October. I have been checking the mail at the crossroads every 2 weeks since my father left for—" She stopped, because she had been about to say for nothing because my father did not leave. But he had left. He had left 6 months ago or more, and she had not known. Somebody had kept her from knowing. Somebody in her own house. "I never got this letter. I have never seen this letter. This letter has been in my father's tin box where a stranger put it, and the corner has been tore off before I laid eyes on it." "Yes, ma'am." "Then the stranger read it." "Yes, ma'am." "Then the stranger knew my father was comin' home." "Yes, ma'am." "Then the stranger—" She stopped. She could not finish. When Boone finished it for her quiet, the way a doctor finishes a diagnosis nobody wants. "The stranger knew your father was comin' back to the homestead, Miss Prescott, and your father did not make it home." Leora laid the letter down on the table. She put both hands flat on either side of it. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "My father did not die of his heart." No, ma'am, I do not reckon he did. Somebody killed my father. I am afraid it looks that way. And somebody took his place in my house for 5 months, and ate at my table, and answered to his name, and let me wash his shirts, and let me bring him his supper, and let me—" She could not finish that one either. She put her face down in her hands. When Boone did not touch her. He sat across the table from her, and he watched the top of her head, and his own face was the face of a man who had seen a great deal of grief in his life, and had learned that there was no hurrying any of it. After a while, she lifted her face. Her eyes were dry, but her mouth was not her mouth anymore. It was the mouth of a woman who had made up her mind about something. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "I am going to find the man who did this." "Yes, ma'am. I am going to find him, and I am going to make him answer for it. Every minute of it. Every biscuit, every shirt, every sorry." "Yes, ma'am." "Will you help me?" When Boone did not say yes right away, he sat with it. He held the coffee cup in his good hand. He looked at the letter on the table between them. He looked at the woman across from him, with the dirt of her father's grave still on her skirt, and the mark of a splinter on her palm, and a face that had not yet decided whether it would ever weep again. "Miss Prescott," he said, "I came here to give you a button and an apology, and I meant to be gone by noon." "I know you did. I am a bad man to stand beside in open country, ma'am. I have enemies. I will bring more of them to your door." "You have already stood between me and 3 of them this morning, Mr. Boone, and I am still here. I will take my chances." He looked at her. He set the cup down. He reached across the table with his good hand, slow, and he turned it palm up between them, and he left it there. Leora looked at it. She put her hand on top of his. "Yes, ma'am," Juan Boone said. "I will help you." And out on the lane, a good half a mile off, and coming in slow, a single horse was making its way toward the gate. A horse none of them had seen yet. A horse carrying a rider neither of them knew by name. And in the saddlebag of that horse was a folded paper, and on that paper was written in her father's hand the word that had been torn off the letter. The horse came up the lane at a walk that was not quite a walk, the way a horse moves when it has been ridden too hard for too long and is running on nothing but its own good heart. When Boone heard it before Leora did. His hand went to the pistol without thinking. Leora saw the movement, and her own hand closed on the sharps where it lay on the table. "How many?" "1. "Friend or no?" "Cannot say yet, Miss Prescott." They went out onto the porch together. One stood a half step in front of her. She did not tell him to move back. She did not mind it, and that itself was a thing she would have to think on later if there was a later. The rider was slumped in the saddle. A woman, young, hair come loose under the bonnet. One side of her face was swelled black and purple, the eye on that side near shut. She had one hand on the reins and the other pressed hard against her ribs, like she was holding something inside herself that wanted out. "Steady," Juan said to the horse low. The woman lifted her head. "Is this the Prescott place?" "It is," Leora said. "Thank God." And she slid sideways out of the saddle, and Juan caught her with his good arm, and the 2 of them went down in the dirt together because his bad arm would not take the weight. "Easy, miss. Easy now." "My pocket. My right pocket. Before I go under, take it. Take it now." Leora was down beside them. Her hand went into the skirt pocket. A folded paper, stained dark at the corner, sweat soft at the fold. "I have it. Read it." "Miss." "Read it before I—" And she was out, just like that. Her head rolled back against Juan's arm, and her mouth came open, and for one bad second, Leora thought she was dead. When laid his head down near her mouth. "Breathin'. Thank the Lord. But not for long, Miss Prescott. Not without help." They carried her in together. He took the shoulders because the bad arm would not take the legs. She took the legs because she had been carrying her own weight in feed sacks since she was 12. They laid the woman on her father's bed because it was the cleanest place in the house, and because Leora did not know yet that there was another reason. Leora cut away the side of the dress with her sewing scissors. Her hands shook. She steadied them the way her mother had taught her 30 years ago by biting down on the inside of her cheek until the pain made her focus. "Ribs," she said. "3 of them, maybe 4. Somebody worked her over Mr. Boone. With a boot by the look of it." "You have seen this before?" "Yes, ma'am, more than once." She did not ask. She bound the ribs with strips torn from a clean sheet tight enough to hold loose enough to let the woman breathe. The woman moaned once and did not wake. When Leora stood up, her dress was wet at the knees with another woman's blood, and she did not have any room left in her to care. The letter Mr. Boone. Yes. They sat at the table again. The same table, the same tin box open, the coffee gone cold. Leora opened the paper with hands she could not make still. It was her father's hand, the clean, steady hand, not the scrawl. "Leora girl." Her voice came out so thin she did not know it for her own. "Leora girl, if this letter reaches you and I do not, then Ruth has done what she promised me, and I want you to see that she has paid for her trouble out of the money in the can behind the stove in the camp kitchen. She has earned it twice over." She looked up. The woman on the bed had not moved. "Keep reading, ma'am." "The man in my house is my brother. His name is Eben Prescott. He is 2 years older than me. I told you I had no kin, because I meant it in my heart. But I had kin in the world, and I turned my back on him in the spring of '65, and I prayed to God every day for 20 years that he would not find us." Leora stopped. She had to. "He found us, Leora girl. He come to the camp in September and he sat across the fire from me and ate out of my tin plate, and he told me he had been in the territorial prison at Deer Lodge for 18 of them 20 years, and he had got out, and he was going home, and he meant to take what was owed him." Wen did not speak. "There is nothing owed him. Your grandfather left that quarter section to me plain and legal, because your Uncle Eben put a bullet in a man in Pittsburgh in '62 for the price of a pair of boots, and your grandfather cut him off, and so did I, and so would your grandmother have done had she lived to know about it." Leora's voice had dropped down to almost a whisper. "He told me he was going home to take the land. I said he could not take what was not his. He said, 'Watch me.' I made the mistake of my life, Leora girl. I thought I had time. I thought I could get there ahead of him on a fast horse by the river road. I did not think he would kill me for it. I was wrong." She could not read the next line. One gentle put his hand out and took the paper. He did not take it far. He laid it between them, and he read it out in a voice as steady as a man could make it. "If you are reading this, then I am dead, and my brother is in my chair, and you have not known the difference because he and I come out of the same womb, and he was always the clever one. Do not grieve for me more than you have to. Go to the sheriff in Helena. Ask for Sheriff Maynard. Tell him Eben Prescott is out of Deer Lodge. Show him this letter. He will know what to do." A pause. "And Leora girl, forgive me. Forgive an old man for thinking he was cleverer than he was. Forgive me for leaving you alone in the house with a devil I should have warned you about 30 years ago." One stopped. "That is all." "No," Leora said. "Read the last line." "Ma'am, read it. Your pa who loved you every day of your life, Jeremiah." Leora put her hands flat on the table, and she set her forehead down on the backs of them, and she stayed there a long breath. Wen did not speak. He did not touch her. He had learned already that she did not want touchin' while she was breakin', and he was a man who could learn a thing once and keep it. When she lifted her head, her eyes were dry. "Mr. Boone." "Yes, ma'am." "I have an uncle." "Yes, ma'am." "I have an uncle who has been eatin' at my table for 5 months." "Yes, ma'am." "I have an uncle who murdered my father in the river country and rode home in his coat." "Yes, ma'am." "And he is not at this table, Mr. Boone." "No, ma'am." "Then where is he?" One looked at the window. "That is the question, Miss Prescott." A sound come from the bed. The woman had opened her good eye, a very clear, very pale blue, and it did not belong in a face as battered as hers. "Water." Leora was up before Juan could move. She had the ladle at the bucket, and she was at the bed, and she had the woman's head up on her arm and the water going in a spoonful at a time. Slow, slow now. Thank you. Rest. No. You are hurt. I am. I have been hurt before. Let me talk. Leora looked at Juan. Juan nodded. All right, Leora said. Talk. My name is Ruth Alderman. I was the cook at the Vander Linde camp. I know your name, ma'am. My father wrote it. Ruth's good eye closed for a second. Something like relief. Something like grief laid on top of it. He wrote it. He said to pay you out of the can behind the stove. He would say that. He was that kind of man. Was Miss Prescott. He is gone. I am sorry. I am sorry to be the one to tell you twice. Tell me how. Ruth's good eye opened. It was steady. He got on a horse on the 18th of March. He was going south. He paid me $10 to start 3 days behind him with the letter in case he did not make it. He said if he made it, I was to keep the $10 for my trouble. If he did not, I was to ride till I dropped, and I was to put that letter in your hand myself. And he did not make it. I come across his horse on the 4th day saddled, no rider, grazing a quarter mile off the river road. I looked for him. I looked hard, Miss Prescott. I found his hat. I found his coat. His coat? Yes. Was a button missing off the coat? Yes, Miss Prescott. One. The one my father gave to Mr. Boone. Ruth looked at Juan. A small, tired smile broke one side of her mouth. You got there then, Juan Boone? I got there, Ruth. Took you long enough. I had trouble on the road. Everybody has trouble on the road, Juan. You are just slow. Leora was looking between them. You know one another. We know one another. He come through our camp in January. Your pa liked him. Took him in like a son for a week. Fed him up. Fixed his saddle. Mr. Boone is a hard man with a pistol. Miss Prescott, but he is not a bad one, whatever anybody has told you. Mr. Hartley said he killed 4 men in Bozeman. 3, Ruth said. And 2 of them had it comin'. And the 4th one was not Mr. Boone at all. It was a man who looks like him, and who has been killin' men up and down the Yellowstone for 5 years, and lettin' Mr. Boone take the blame for it. Leora looked at Juan. Juan was looking at the floor. Mr. Boone. Miss Prescott. Is that true? The part about the 4th man. Yes, ma'am. And you never cleared it up. I did not have a way to clear it up, Miss Prescott. The man who done it looks enough like me to have fooled a deputy in Livingston. It is my word against a corpse's. I have been livin' with it. Who is he? Juan lifted his head. I do not know his name. I never have. I saw him once across a street in Miles City 2 years back. I saw the back of his head and the set of his shoulders, and I knew I was looking at a man wearing my face. When I went after him, he was gone. I have been 1 step behind him ever since. From the bed, Ruth. Describe him, Juan. Tall, lean, fair hair, a scar through the left eyebrow. Rides a black mare with a white stocking on the off-fore. Ruth closed her good eye. Miss Prescott. Yes. The man who stove in my ribs 2 days ago and took the letter out of my saddlebag and left me for dead in a ditch outside of Augusta had a scar through his left eyebrow and rode a black mare with a white stocking on the off-fore. Juan Boone's face went perfectly still. He took the letter. He took it, Juan. He tore the corner off, and he put it back in my bag, and he kicked me till I stopped moving, and he rode off. He thought I was dead. But he left the letter. He left the letter because he had already read it, and because he knew I could not get here alive. Juan stood up. He did not speak. He went to the door. He looked out. Mr. Boone. Yes, Miss Prescott. Are you telling me that the man who killed my father and the man who has been wearing your face across 3 territories are working together? I am telling you, ma'am, that I do not believe in that kind of coincidence. Then what do you believe? When turned around. And for the first time since he had ridden up on her place the day before, Leora saw something in his face that was not tired, and was not steady, and was not kind. Something else. The face of a man who had looked into a dark room and understood at last what was in it. "Miss Prescott, I believe your Uncle Eben Prescott and that's been wearing my face are the same man." Leora sat down. She had been standing a second before. Her legs had quit without her say-so. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am, that is not possible." "It is possible, ma'am. A man who spent 18 years in Deer Lodge has had a long time to learn how to be other people. And a man who looks exact like your father also looks enough like me to have fooled a deputy in Livingston because I am told I favor your father through the jaw." "You do not favor my father. Miss Prescott, I saw him lying in the grave this morning. We have the same jaw. You did not see it because you were not looking for it. I saw it because I have been looking for that face in every window for 2 years. Leora put her head in her hands. Ruth from the bed said very quiet, "One." "Yes, Ruth." "Then he knew you were coming." "Yes." "Then he is waiting." "Yes, Ruth, he is waiting." And out in the yard, carried on the wind from the north road, faint at first, and then not faint, come the sound of more than one horse coming down the lane at a trot. Leora stood up. She went to the window. "Mr. Boone." "Yes." "It is the Hartleys. All three. And a fourth man riding in front. Big man. Black coat. Star on his chest." "Sheriff Maynard?" "You know him. By reputation, Miss Prescott, and not a good one." "My father said to go to Sheriff Maynard." "Your father had not been in Helena in 20 years, Miss Prescott. Sheriff Maynard is not the man your father knew. Sheriff Maynard has been on the Hartley payroll since the winter before last. If he is riding up your lane in company with them 3 brothers, he is not riding up to help you." Leora looked at the rifle on the table. She looked at the woman on the bed. She looked at the man at the door. "Mr. Boone?" "Ma'am? How many shells in that revolver?" 6. "How many in your belt?" 12. "I have 9 in the sharps box, and another 6 in the pocket of my father's coat." "That will do." "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am? I do not want a gunfight in my yard." "No, ma'am, nobody does. But sometimes the yard you got is the yard a gunfight comes to, and you fight it, or you lose the yard. If we open fire on a sheriff, Mr. Boone, we are done. I will hang for it." "Miss Prescott, I would like you to hear me now. That star on that man's chest is tin and a lie. He has come to put you off this land. He has come with a paper that will not stand in any court that is not paid for. He has come because a man paid him to come. And the man who paid him is the same man who killed your father, and who has been wearing my face, and who will be riding in behind them before sundown to finish the thing." "How do you know he will ride in?" "Because I would, ma'am, and I know him now." Ruth spoke from the bed. "Miss Prescott." "Yes." "Your father said at the last that he was sorry. He said it to me the night before he rode. He said, 'Tell my girl I am sorry. Tell her I should have stayed. Tell her a man's land is only worth as much as the people he leaves to hold it.' And then he said one more thing." "What?" "He said Leora is not alone. He said it plain. He said she will not be alone when it comes. I did not know what he meant then, Miss Prescott, but I am looking at it now." Leora turned from the window. She looked at Juan Boone in the doorway, with his hat in his good hand and his bad arm held against his chest, and his pistol loose in the holster. She looked at him a long time. "Mr. Boone?" "Ma'am?" "Why are you still here?" "Ma'am, you could have ridden out last night. You could have ridden out this morning. You could have left the button on my porch and gone. Why are you still here?" Juan did not answer right away. He looked at her, and he looked at the floor, and he looked at her again. "Your father asked me to see that you were safe, Miss Prescott. He said it that last night in the camp before he rode. He said if I don't make it home, you see my girl is safe. You put her in a place where no man can touch her. I give him my word. I am a man with little else to my name, but my word, ma'am, and I do not break it even for a man I have only known 6 weeks. You rode 400 miles on a word." "Yes, ma'am, I did." "With a broke arm." "It was not broke when I started. Leora did not answer. She walked over to him. She stopped a foot from him. She looked up at him, and he looked down at her, and neither of them moved. Mr. Boone. Ma'am. I do not know yet what I think of you. No, ma'am. But I am glad you are at my door. Yes, ma'am. The hooves were at the gate. Leora picked up the sharps. You stand on my right. Yes, ma'am. And if the fourth rider comes with the black mare and the white stockin'? Yes, ma'am. He is mine, Mr. Boone. When Boone took the hat off his head and held it against his chest for 1 second, the way a man does at a grave or at an altar, then he put it back on. Yes, Miss Prescott, he said. And they opened the door. Sheriff Maynard was a big man gone soft in the middle. He had the star on his coat and the smile on his face that belonged to men who had learned young that a badge was a thing you could sell. He pulled his horse up 10 feet from the porch, and he tipped his hat to Leora, and he did not get down. Miss Prescott. Sheriff? I've come on a sad errand. I doubt it, Sheriff. His smile went a little thinner. Now, I've come with a paper signed by Judge Colson in Helena 3 days ago. It's an order of ejectment on a promissory note held by Mr. James Hartley here. The note come due on March the 21st. You are 37 days in default. The law gives me no choice, Miss Prescott. I am here to see you off this place by sundown. My father paid that note. Ma'am? I said my father paid that note. In the spring of '79, he paid it in full. You got the paper? No. Then it's the same as never paid, ma'am. I am sorry. I truly am. But the judge has signed and the law... Sheriff. When Boone's voice... Quiet. From her right. Maynard's eyes moved. The smile went clean off. Boone? Sheriff? You got no business standing on this porch. I got more business here than you do, Sheriff. That a fact. That is a fact. Jim Hartley off on the roan laid a hand near the rifle across his saddle. Cal Hartley on the mule did the same. Silas on the black stallion only watched. Silas was the one Leora had always been most afraid of, even when she was a child, and the Hartleys were her neighbors, and nothing worse. Silas did not hurry. Silas did not need to. Miss Prescott, Maynard said, I don't want no trouble. Then ride out, Sheriff. I cannot do that, ma'am. Then you want trouble. Miss Prescott. Sheriff Maynard. Her voice cut across his. The sharps come up, not pointed at him, not yet, but up across her body where a man could see it. One shifted a half step to her right. The Hartleys' hands went 1 inch nearer to their guns and froze there. Sheriff? I have a letter in this house. A letter from my father. A letter that says the man who has been living in this house in my father's name is a killer out of Deer Lodge prison, and that the man who drew up your paper, and the man who paid off your judge, and the man who is riding in behind you right now to see this done, are one and the same. I will put that letter in your hand. If you are an honest man, you will read it, and you will turn around, and you will ride to Helena and bring back a deputy who is not on Jim Hartley's payroll. If you are not an honest man, careful, Miss Prescott. If you are not sheriff, then my Uncle Eben Prescott is going to ride in here in about 20 minutes, and he is going to kill you too, because he does not leave witnesses, and the Hartleys have been witnesses to his business for 5 months. He does not need you any longer than it takes to put me off this porch. You are a dead man in a black coat, Sheriff, and you are too dull to know it. Maynard did not speak. His face had gone a shade nobody wears on purpose. Jim Hartley said loud, She's lying, Sheriff. She's trying to save her hide with a fairy story. I have the letter, Mr. Hartley. Show it then. I will show it to the sheriff. I will not show it to a man who is planning to take it off me by force. Maynard looked at Jim Hartley. Then he looked at Leora. Then he looked at Juan Boone. He looked at Juan Boone the longest. Boone, you vouch for this letter. I read it with my own eyes, Sheriff, not 20 minutes ago. You'd swear to it in court. I'd swear to it in hell, Sheriff. A long breath. Show it to me, Miss Prescott. Sheriff, Jim Hartley began. Shut your mouth, Jim. Maynard's voice had gone flat. I said shut it. You let me do my job. Leora kept the rifle in her right hand. She reached back with her left through the open door, and the paper come out of the tin box where she had gone back under. She did not walk down the steps. She held it out. Maynard got down off his horse, then slow old knees, and he come up the steps and he took the letter. He read. He turned it over. He read the back. His face did not change, but the color did. It went gray. Miss Prescott. Sheriff, when did this letter come into your hand? Not an hour ago. The woman who carried it is in the back room. She has 3 broken ribs and she rode 4 days to put it in my palm. What's her name? Ruth Alderman. Ruth Alderman from the Vanderlinde camp. Yes, Sheriff. I know that name. She cooked at a camp my cousin worked in '83. Yes, Sheriff. Maynard folded the letter. He did not give it back. He held it in his hand. Jim Hartley. Sheriff, you ain't taken the word of... Jim, drop your hand off that rifle or I will shoot it off your arm. Jim Hartley's hand come up slow and sat on the pommel where anyone could see it. Now, Jim, you look at me and you tell me true. Who give you the note you come here with? My father left it to me. Your father been dead 9 months. You rode into my office 3 days ago with a note that looks fresh as milk. Who give you that note, Jim? Silence. Jim? A man. A man. A tall man. Fair hair, scar through the eyebrow. Said he was her uncle. Said he was the administrator of Jeremiah Prescott's estate. Said the note had turned up in the old man's papers and he was calling it in. Maynard closed his eyes for 1 second. You took a note from a stranger who said he was her uncle, and you come to my office, and you swore out an affidavit. Sheriff. Jim Hartley. You have made me a party to a fraud. Sheriff, I did not know. You did not ask. You did not ask because you did not want to know Jim. I have known your family 30 years. I have known your father. He would have cut your hand off before he would have put his name to a forged note. You drag me into this, and you drag this office into it, and you... He stopped. He was breathing hard. He looked at Juan Boone. Boone. Sheriff. This uncle of hers. Yes. The one my cousin in Livingston told me about last summer. The one who has been riding up and down the Yellowstone in your hat. The same man, Sheriff. And he is riding here. He is, by my reckon, inside of 20 minutes. He is coming to see the Hartleys finish their work, and when they are finished, he is coming to finish them. Maynard turned around on the porch, and he looked at Jim Hartley and he said, Jim, take your brothers and ride out. What? I said ride out, ride off this place. If you are gone when he gets here, you may live till Tuesday. If you are here, you will die in this yard, and I will not lift a finger to stop it, because you have earned it, and because the woman has earned the peace of watching it. Sheriff, you cannot. I can, Jim, I can and I will. You got a bad paper. You got no stand-in. You got 10 minutes to be a mile from this lane. Go. Jim Hartley stared at him. Cal stared at him. Only Silas did not stare. Silas had already turned his horse. Jim, Silas said, and it was the first word any of them had heard out of Silas in the 2 days this had been happening. Jim, we are going. Jim Hartley looked at Leora. He looked at her a long time. Then he spat in the dirt of her yard, and he reined the roan around, and the 3 of them rode up the lane at a trot that was faster than a trot by the time they hit the bend. Maynard stood on the porch. He put the letter in his coat. Miss Prescott? Sheriff? I am going to be honest with you. That would be a change, Sheriff. He did not smile, but his mouth moved. I have not been a good sheriff these 2 years. I took money I should not have took. I signed papers I should not have signed. I am not going to pretend to you that I come here today for any reason but to see you put off this place, and I am not going to pretend I had any notion this was bigger than a banknote and a stubborn girl. No, sir, but I am here now, and I have the letter, and I have a name, and I have jurisdiction. I am going to stand in this yard with you, Miss Prescott, and I am going to arrest Eben Prescott for the murder of his brother when he rides up that lane. And if he draws on me, I am going to shoot him. And if he kills me first, you and Mr. Boone are going to finish what I could not. And afterwards, whichever of us is standin', I am going to ride into Helena, and I am going to turn in this star because I have not earned it in a long time." Leora looked at him. "Sheriff?" "Ma'am?" "That is more honest than I expected." "It is more honest than I expected, Miss Prescott. I did not know I had it in me till I read that letter." "Thank you, Sheriff." "Don't thank me yet, ma'am. There is a man coming down that lane I'm afraid of, and I have not been afraid of a man in 20 years. They waited. Leora moved Ruth off the bed and onto a pallet on the kitchen floor, because the bed was in a direct line from the front window, and she did not trust any wall in this house to stop a bullet. Ruth was awake now and in pain, and would not take the laudanum Leora offered because she wanted her eyes clear. She had a derringer in her boot. She had taken it out and laid it on the pallet beside her hand. "Ma'am," Leora said, "you cannot fight." "I can pull a trigger, Miss Prescott. That is all I need to do." "Ruth." "He kicked me until I stopped moving, Miss Prescott, and then he kicked me twice more. I will pull a trigger or I will die trying to, and either way I will be of more use to you on this floor than in that bed." Leora did not argue. She went back to the porch. One was on her right. Maynard was on her left. The three of them stood in a line with the open door behind them because Juan had said open doors were harder targets than men standing clear, and Maynard had said he had never thought of it that way in his life, and Juan had said no. "Sheriff, you would not have very dry," and for one breath they had almost laughed. No one laughed now. "Mr. Boone?" "Ma'am." "He will be on the black mare." "He will." "How do we know he is not bringin' men?" "He has no men, Miss Prescott. That is the one thing I know of him for certain. He works alone. He has always worked alone. He does not trust another human being, and he does not ask one to trust him." "How do you know?" "Because I have been 3 steps behind him for 2 years, ma'am, and I have watched every town he left, and he has never left one in company." "Sheriff?" "Ma'am." "When he comes, I would like to speak to him first." "Miss Prescott." 1 minute, Sheriff, 1 minute, that is all." "Ma'am, this is not a man you have a conversation with." "I buried my father this morning for the 2nd time, Sheriff. I have earned 1 minute." Maynard looked at Juan. Juan looked at her. "1 minute, Miss Prescott," Juan said. "On my word. And if he goes for a gun, it is over, and it is over no matter where your minute is in the countin'." "Yes, Mr. Boone." The wind come up the lane, and down at the far end, where the lane bent around the big rock that had been there since the world was young, a black mare walked into view with a white stocking on the off fore. A tall man in a dust-colored coat sat easy in the saddle. He was whistling. They could hear him from 200 yards out because the wind was with him. He was whistling an old song, a song her mother had sung to her when she was small, and the sound of it coming up the lane in a stranger's throat went through Leora like a knife. Her hands went cold on the sharps. Her breath come up short. She had to set her teeth to keep from making a sound. "Steady, Miss Prescott." One said very low, "Steady now." "He is whistling my mother's song." "I know, ma'am." "How does he know my mother's song?" "Because he is your pa's brother, Miss Prescott. He grew up with the same songs." She had not thought of that. She had not thought at all in the last hour of the fact that the man riding up her lane was blood. Her father's blood. A man with her grandfather's name in his throat and her grandmother's eyes in his face. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "I cannot look at a face like my father's and shoot it, Miss Prescott. It will not be your father's face when he is close. I have seen it. It is like looking at a man in a mask made of somebody you loved. You will know the difference when you see it." "Yes." "Steady." "Yes." The black mare walked up. At 50 yards the whistling stopped. At 30 the rider lifted his head and saw them. He did not slow. He did not reach for a gun. He rode up to the gate, and he stopped the mare, and he tipped his hat to them like a man paying a social call. "Leora, girl." Her stomach turned over. It was her father's voice. It was the same voice. The same cadence. The same turn at the end of the word, the way her father had always said girl, like it had two syllables. Don't you call me that. I have called you that for sweetheart. It is a hard habit to break. I said, don't you call me that. Eben Prescott smiled. It was her father's smile. It was not her father's smile. One had been right. There was a thing behind it that was not behind her father's smile, and she had not been able to name it yesterday when she had sat across the table from this man and handed him his supper, but she could name it now. It was the smile of a man who had been in a room for 18 years, where nothing was funny, and who had taught himself to make the face anyway because making the face was useful. Sheriff Maynard, Mr. Prescott? I come to collect my niece. She is not going with you, Mr. Prescott. Oh. I have a letter, Mr. Prescott, in your brother's hand. Eben Prescott's eyes did not move off Leora. Do you, Sheriff? I do. And what does my brother have to say from the grave? He says you put him there. The smile did not move. Well, that is unfortunate. Mr. Prescott, step down off that horse. Slow. Hands where I can see 'em. You are under arrest for the murder of Jeremiah Prescott. Eben Prescott did not step down. He looked at Leora. He looked at her the way a man looks at a daughter he has not seen in a long while, and her stomach went over again, because the look was her father's look. The look her father had used on her every morning of her life when she come into the kitchen. Leora, girl, you are going to let this man arrest me. You killed my father. I did. She had not expected him to say it. She had expected a denial. She had expected a story. She had expected a smoother man. The bare word come at her like a thrown rock, and she had nothing up to catch it with. Why? Because he took what was mine, sweetheart. Our father's land, our father's name. He cut me off when I was 19 years old for a thing I did in a bar room in Pittsburgh, and he kept the quarter section, and he kept the horses, and he kept the mother, and he kept you, Leora girl, because that land should have come with a daughter on it, and the daughter should have been mine, and he took her too. Stop it. I am not lying to you, Leora. I have done lying to you. I sat at your table for 5 months, and I told you lies, and I am done. I killed my brother because he had my whole life in his hand, and he would not give me a piece of it. I am not sorry for it. I am sorry for nothing in my life except that I did not come for him sooner. Step down, Mr. Prescott, Maynard said. Sheriff? Step down. Sheriff, I have a question for you first. Get down off that horse. Sheriff, did you really think a man who spent 18 years in Deer Lodge come out to his brother's homestead without a rifle pointed at the porch from a quarter-mile off? When Boone moved, it was the only warning any of them got. He hit Leora in the shoulder with his good arm, and they went sideways through the open door together, and somewhere in the same second, Maynard was already diving, and the shot came from the cottonwood above the grave in the back pasture, and the shot took Maynard in the side, not the center, and Maynard hit the porch and rolled and come up against the rail with his pistol in his hand and the breath whistling out of him wrong. Sheriff, hit Miss Prescott. I am hit. How bad? I do not know yet. Eben Prescott had not moved off the horse. He sat watching the porch, and he was smiling still, and he said easy, Leora girl, I do have one friend in the world. I lied about that too. Wen was already at the side window with the pistol out. Miss Prescott, the cottonwood. Can you make the cottonwood with the sharps? Yes. Then make it. She was up at the window before she knew she had moved. The sharps came to her shoulder. Her father had taught her this rifle when she was 12 years old. Her father had said, Leora girl, you breathe out and you squeeze and you do not jerk, and the rifle will tell the truth for you. She breathed out. She squeezed. The sharps told the truth. A body fell out of the cottonwood and hit the ground and did not move. Eben Prescott's smile went. That, he said, was unexpected. Step down off that horse, Mr. Prescott, Leora said through the window, and her voice was her father's voice, now low and flat, and not asking twice. Leora girl, I said step down. You will not shoot your own blood. Try me, uncle. Eben Prescott looked at her through the window. His hand moved. It was a fast hand. It was the hand of a man who had practiced 18 years in a cell for this 1 second. It was not fast enough, because Juan Boone had already fired from the other window, and the bullet took Eben Prescott clean through the shoulder, and the pistol come out of Eben's hand and hit the dirt, and Eben Prescott went sideways off the black mare and landed hard, and the mare bolted, and Eben lay in the dirt of his niece's yard with his good hand on his shoulder, and blood comin' between the fingers and his face finally no longer smilin'. He looked up at the sky. "Leora girl." From the window, she did not answer. "Leora girl, come out here. Let me see you one time with my own eyes while I still can." She did not move. Juan was already out the door with the rope off the porch peg, and he was on Eben Prescott before Eben could lift the good hand again, and he had the rope on the wrists one-handed, the way a man who has done it before does it. "He is secured, Miss Prescott." "Sheriff?" "Alive, Miss Prescott. For now. I need a doctor." "Ruth." "Miss Prescott. Ruth is worse than the sheriff. I will need to ride." "Ma'am, you cannot leave this yard alone." "I am not leaving alone, Mr. Boone." She walked out onto the porch. She had the sharps in her left hand loose, pointed at the dirt. She walked down the steps. She walked up to Eben Prescott where he lay in her yard, and she looked down at him, and he looked up at her, and for one long breath, she saw her father's eyes in a stranger's face, and her heart broke one more time for the last time she promised herself the last time. "Uncle." "Leora." "You ate my biscuits." "Yes." "You wore his coat." "Yes." "You slept in the bed I carried up from Pennsylvania when I was 9 years old." "Yes." "And you killed my father in the river country, and you rode home whistling his song." "Yes." She knelt down. She was very close to him now, her face a foot from his. His blood was coming into the dirt between them. He was pale. He was going to live, or he was not going to live, and she did not yet know which, and she found that she did not much care. "Uncle Eben." "Yes, girl. You will not die today. No, no, sir. You will live. You will live, and you will go to Helena in a wagon, and you will sit in a cell, and you will be tried by a judge who is not on anybody's payroll, and you will hang in front of a crowd. And I am going to be in the front row of that crowd, uncle. I am going to stand in the front row, and I am going to look at your face, and I am going to say my father's name out loud when the drop goes, so that the last human sound you ever hear is the name of the man you killed, spoken by the daughter you tried to take her land from." Eben Prescott closed his eyes. "That is my girl," he said. "I am not your girl." "No." "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "Put him in the wagon. Tie him to the bed. I will ride for the doctor. You keep him alive till I get back. If he dies on the road, he dies without a rope, and I want the rope." "Yes, ma'am." She stood up. She looked one time at Juan Boone. "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am." "Thank you." "Ma'am." And she walked to the barn, and she saddled her father's bay one-handed, because she was still carrying the sharps, and she did not set the rifle down, because she did not know yet if she ever would again. The bay come out of the barn under her like the horse had been waiting all morning to run, and maybe it had. Leora took the lane at a dead gallop, and she did not look back, because if she looked back, she would see the man tied to the wagon bed in her yard, and the sheriff bleeding on her porch, and the woman on the kitchen floor with a derringer in her hand, and she did not have the room in her chest for any of it. She had room for one thing. She had room for the ride. 9 miles into town. 9 miles on a bay that had not been ridden hard in 3 years. She prayed to a God she had quit speaking to 14 days ago, and she did not pray for herself. She prayed for Ruth Alderman, who had come 4 days with broken ribs to put a letter in her hand. She prayed for a sheriff who had said in her yard that he had not earned his star in a long time and was fixin' to turn it in. She prayed for a man named Juan Boone, who had been shot at on her porch because he had given a word to a dead man. She did not pray for Eben Prescott. She had no prayer left for Eben Prescott. She made the doctor's door in under an hour. She did not get down. She screamed his name from the saddle, And when his wife come to the window, she said, "Mrs. Crenshaw, you send him to the Prescott place, and you send him now, and you tell him to bring everything he has got." The doctor was at the bay's head in 3 minutes, with his bag over his and his coat half on, and he said, "Who's bleedin' girl?" And she said, "3 of them, doctor, and one of them I want you to save, and one of them I do not care if you save, and one of them I will burn your house down over if you let her die." The doctor said, "That is clear enough, Miss Prescott." And he climbed into his buggy, and he whipped the horse up. She rode back behind him. She rode slower going home. She made herself slow because the bay was blown and because she was done killing things she loved over Eben Prescott. The doctor worked on Ruth first because Juan Boone had said to, and because Juan Boone had been right. The ribs had started to turn inside, and another hour would have been another hour too many. The doctor took Maynard second because the bullet had gone through clean, and there was time. The doctor took Eben Prescott last, and he took him like a man taking out a splinter, and he said over his shoulder, "Miss Prescott, this man will live to stand in front of a judge." And Leora said, "Thank you, doctor. That is all I ask." They put Eben Prescott in the wagon bed with his hands tied behind him and his good ankle chained to the axle, and Sheriff Maynard White, as milk, but upright, drove the team himself. When Boone rode alongside, Leora rode behind. They made Helena by sundown of the next day, and Eben Prescott was in a cell at the territorial jail by nightfall, and 3 deputies who had never been on the Hartley payroll stood watch on him in shifts, and Sheriff Maynard signed a deposition and laid his star on the desk, and nobody picked the star up. The Hartleys were gone. Jim and Cal and Silas had taken a train east out of Great Falls 2 days after they rode off Leora's lane, and they left their mother's house standing open with the dogs still in the yard. The marshal in Helena put out a notice on them, and it did no good, and nobody in that country ever heard a Hartley name again. Their land went to the bank in September, and the bank sold it for next to nothing to a young couple out of Minnesota who had 3 children and no guile, and the children played in the yard where the dogs had been, and the country slowly over the next year let itself forget. The trial was in October. The judge was a man named Thatcher out of Missoula, and he was not on any man's payroll, and he had read the letter 3 times, and he had heard Ruth Alderman speak from a chair, because her ribs would not let her stand, and he had heard Juan Boone speak, and he had heard Sheriff Maynard speak, and he had heard Leora Prescott speak last, because he had asked her to go last because he had said in chambers that a woman who had buried her father twice ought to have the final word. Leora had stood up in that courtroom with her hands folded in front of her and her chin up, and she had said what she had said in her yard. She had said, "My father was a good man. He was not a clever man. He was not a rich man. He was not a man who ever did harm to any soul in this world. He raised me alone from the time I was 7 years old. He taught me to shoot the rifle that sits in my cabin, and to read the book that sits on my table, and to put a seed in the ground and know which way was up. He died on a river road in March because his own brother could not bear the sight of him. I do not ask this court for mercy on that brother. I ask this court for a rope." And Judge Thatcher Quiet had said, "Miss Prescott, the court has one for him." Eben Prescott hanged on a Tuesday morning. Leora rode in for it. She stood in the front row of the crowd, and she did not wear black because she had worn black for 14 days after her father died, and she had done with black. She wore the blue dress her father had bought her in the summer of '82, with the money from the bay mare. It was the last dress he ever bought her. It had been folded in the cedar chest for 3 years, and she had pressed it the night before. When the marshal walked Eben Prescott up onto the platform, Eben Prescott had looked for her in the crowd, and he had found her in the front row, and he had smiled one last time, the smile that was her father's smile, and was not. "Leora girl," he had said. And Leora Prescott, in a voice that carried to the back of the yard, had said, "Jeremiah Prescott." She had said her father's name out loud, clear, in front of 200 people, and the drop had gone on the last syllable of it, and the last human sound Eben Prescott ever heard was the name of his brother in his niece's mouth. Leora did not cry. She turned around. She walked through the crowd, and the crowd parted for her because the story had traveled, and there was not a man nor a woman in that town who did not know by then who she was. She walked to where Juan Boone stood holding the bay. She took the reins from his hand. She did not speak. He did not speak. They rode out of town together at a walk. 3 miles out on the open road, she said, "Mr. Boone." "Ma'am?" "I am going to cry now. I would like you to ride ahead a piece." "Yes, ma'am." And he rode ahead 100 yards, and he did not look back, because he knew she did not want him to, and he let her have the road to herself for a good half-hour. And when she caught up, her face was wet, and his face was forward, and neither one of them said a word about it, and they rode home. The homestead was not the same. It could not be. A house does not forget a man who ate at its table for 5 months under a stolen name. A yard does not forget the blood that has gone into its dirt. But a house is also only a house, and a yard is only a yard. And Leora Prescott was not a woman who let a building decide what her life was going to be. She tore out the bed her uncle had slept in, and she burned it in the yard. She tore up the floorboards where his boots had stood at the stove, and she put in new ones. She took his clothes, the ones he had worn of her father's, and the ones that had been his own, and she put them in a sack, and she drove them 12 miles to the charity in Helena, and she did not take a receipt. When Boone helped with all of it, he did not ask to. He did not say he would. He was just there every morning at the yard pump at sunup with the coffee on by the time she come down. He slept in the lean-to for 6 weeks, and he did not come near the house after dark, and he did not speak of what had happened in the yard, and he did not speak of what might happen after. Ruth Alderman stayed 4 weeks till the ribs would let her travel, and then she went north again, because she said she had a sister in the Judith Basin she had not seen in 11 years, and she aimed to fix that. Leora paid her out of the can behind the stove in the Vanderlinde camp kitchen, which Juan Boone had ridden up and fetched, and brought back in a flour sack, $307 in currency and coin, and the handwritten deed to the quarter section that Jeremiah Prescott had paid off in the spring of '79, and had given his brother Eben to hold, because Jeremiah Prescott had been a man who wanted to believe right up to the very last that a brother was a brother. The deed was clean. It was in the land office in Helena by the end of November. The bank tore up the false note. The quarter section was Leora Prescott's free and clear, and she had a paper to prove it, and the paper was in the same tin box as her father's letter, and she put both of them in a drawer, and she shut the drawer, and she did not open it again that winter. When Boone's arm healed slow, the doctor said it had been broke in 3 places, and that it would never be what it was, and Juan Boone said, "Doctor, I have never been what I was. I will live." The doctor had smiled at that. The doctor had said he liked the man. Leora, listening from the next room, had almost smiled too, and had been surprised at herself for it. By October she had quit calling him Mr. Boone. "Juan." "Ma'am, I have told you 3 times this week. My name is Leora." "Yes, ma'am." "That is not my name. That is a habit." "Yes, Leora." "There, that was not so hard." "No, ma'am." "Juan?" "I am sorry." "Yes, Leora." They laughed. It was the first time they had laughed. The laugh surprised both of them, and it went on longer than it ought to have gone on, because neither one of them had laughed for a long time, and the sound of it in the kitchen was strange and good. And Leora thought afterwards that if any sound was going to make this a house again, after everything, it would be the sound of 2 people laughing at a small thing over coffee. She did not say this to him. She did not yet say much of anything to him. But she thought it, and she kept it. And she put it in the place inside her chest where she was keeping things now, and which had been empty for 14 days in March, and which was beginning slowly to fill again. On the 4th of November, there was a dance at the Mercer place. It was a barn dance, the first one of the fall, and Leora had not gone to a dance in 7 years, because her father had not liked dances, and because she had not had a dress that fit right, and because the women in the county had for a long time whispered about the Prescott girl, who lived up on the North Quarter with no mother. She had told herself every fall that she did not care. This year she went. She told Juan about it on a Thursday. She said, "There is a dance Saturday night. I have not been in a long time. I would like to go." Yes, ma'am. Leora. Yes, Leora. I would like to go with you. He looked up from the bridle he was mendin'. Ma'am Leora, I am not a dancin' man. I know. I have not been in a room full of people in 4 years without countin' the exits. I know that too. Then why? Because I am tired of countin' exits, Juan. And I think you are tired of countin' them too. And because I would like to walk into a room holdin' the arm of a man I am not afraid of, and there is one such man in this county, and he is sittin' in my barn mendin' a bridle. When Boone set the bridle down, Leora. Yes. I am not the man you deserve to walk into a room with. That is not for you to say. Ma'am, I have killed 3 men. I have been in prison twice. I have a name that travels. A man followed me across 4 territories and shot a sheriff on your porch because of it. I would not be a credit to you in a room of your neighbors. Juan Boone. Yes, you sit here every morning and drink my coffee, and you do not once tell me I am a fool for digging up a grave. You rode 400 miles on the word of a dying man. You stood between me and 3 men with rifles on my own porch. You put a bullet in my uncle when I could not, and you let me be the one to say my father's name at the drop because you knew I needed to say it. There is not a man in this county I would rather walk into a dance with than you, and if the neighbors have a problem, they can have it. He did not answer. Juan? Leora. You are coming to the dance. Yes, Leora. Say it like you mean it. He looked up. His face was the face of a man who had not known, till that moment, that he was allowed to want a thing. Yes, Leora. I am coming to the dance. Good. Leora. Yes. I do not know how to dance. Neither do I. We will figure it out. They figured it out. They walked into the Mercer barn on a Saturday night in November, and the whole barn looked at them because the whole county had heard the story by then, and because Leora Prescott in a blue dress on the arm of the man who had killed her uncle in her own yard was not a sight the county had expected to see in its lifetime. There were whispers, there were stares. There was old Mrs. Ainsley by the punch table who put her hand over her mouth. Leora did not care. She had quit caring what the county thought of her in a ditch outside of Augusta on a horse that had not been hers in a letter she had read out loud in her own kitchen. She walked Juan Boone to the middle of the floor, and she put his good hand on her waist, and she put her hand on his shoulder, and she said, "You step with your right foot first, like walkin', just walkin'. That is all it is." And Juan Boone, who had not touched a woman in 11 years, stepped with his right foot first, and they danced. They were not good. They stepped on each other twice. He turned her the wrong way once, and she laughed out loud, and a few of the women near the wall heard her laugh and looked at each other and did not know what to make of it, and that was all right too. She was not dancing for them. Halfway through the second song, Juan Boone leaned down. Leora. Yes. I have never kissed a woman. She stopped dancing. She looked up at him. Juan, I am sorry. I do not know why I said that. Keep dancing. I am sorry. No, stop. Juan, what did you say? I said I have never kissed a woman, Leora, not in my whole life. I have been a lonesome man. I do not know why I told you. I am sorry. She stood in the middle of the barn floor with her hand on his shoulder, and she looked up at him, and for one long moment she was not in the Mercer barn at all. She was in her own kitchen on an afternoon in May, with a rifle on the table and a letter in her hand, and a man at her door who had ridden 400 miles to keep his word to her father. Juan Boone. Yes. Neither have I. He looked at her. Ma'am, I have never been kissed, Juan. I am 24 years old, and I have never been kissed. I told myself that was all right. I told myself a lot of things, but it was not all right, and I am tired of it. When Boone took his hat off, he held it against his chest. Leora, yes. Let's start slow. And he bent down in the middle of the Mercer barn in front of the whole county with the fiddle playing, and old Mrs. Ainsley with her hand on her mouth, and he kissed Leora Prescott once, light the way a man kisses a thing he is afraid to break. And Leora Prescott, who had not wept at her father's first grave, nor at his second, who had not wept at a courtroom, nor at a hangin', put her forehead down against the shoulder of Juan Boone's coat, and wept the way a woman weeps when something inside her after a long winter has at last been allowed to thaw. Nobody in the barn spoke. The fiddle finished the song. And then Mrs. Ainsley, who had whispered about the Prescott girl for 7 years, walked over and put a handkerchief in Leora's hand and said, "You keep that, dear." And Leora Prescott, who had not had a handkerchief put in her hand by a woman of that county in her whole life, took it and said, "Thank you, ma'am," and did not let go of Juan Boone's arm. They rode home under a moon that was not quite full. Juan rode the gray mare. Leora rode her father's bay. The Sharps was not across her saddle. She had not carried it in 3 months. She had not needed to. Juan. Leora. I have been thinking about what Ruth said. Which part? What my father said at the last, that a man's land is only worth as much as the people he leaves to hold it. Yes, I used to think that was a sad thing to say, because I thought it meant I had to hold the land for him, because I thought it meant the worth of this place was in what somebody else had put into it. And now I think he meant something else. I think he meant the land is only worth what the person on it decides it is worth. And I think he was telling me that whatever worth this place has is mine to decide, not his, not my uncle's, not the Hartleys, not the bank's, mine. Yes, Leora, I am not my father's daughter because I am holding his land, Juan. I am his daughter because I am the woman he raised, and I am not less for having no man's name on this place, and I was not less when I was alone in that kitchen with a rifle across my knees, and I am not more now because you are riding home beside me. I am the same woman. I was always the same woman. I just did not know it. Juan Boone rode beside her and did not answer for a long time. Then he said, Leora. Yes, I rode 400 miles thinking I was bringing you a button and an apology, and I was wrong. I was not bringing you anything. A woman who has already decided who she is does not need a stranger to tell her. She needs a man who knows how to stand next to her and not get in the way. Can you be that man, Juan Boone? I am trying to be Leora Prescott. Try a little harder. Yes, ma'am. They rode the last mile home at a walk, and the cabin was waiting for them at the end of the lane, and the lamp in the window was the lamp Leora had lit before she left, because she had not wanted to come home to a dark house, and the light carried out across the yard and touched the dirt where her uncle had fallen, and the porch where the sheriff had bled, and it made none of it into anything but yard and porch again. A house, a place, a piece of ground on the earth. Hers. Leora Prescott got down off the bay at her own door, and she put the horse in the barn with her own hands. And she walked into her own kitchen, and she put the coffee on for 2. And she knew in that kitchen in the lamplight she had lit for herself, and that no man had lit for her, that she was not a woman who had been saved by anybody. She had been helped. She had been stood beside. She had been loved at last by a man who had earned the right to love her. But she had not been saved. She had saved herself the morning she had raised a shovel at a stranger on a gray mare, and she had saved herself again at a grave in the back pasture, and again at a window with a Sharp's rifle, and again at a hanging in a blue dress her father had bought her, and she would go on saving herself every morning of her life, because that was the work of being a person, and nobody had ever been able to do that work for anybody else. A woman's worth is not a thing given to her by a father, nor taken from her by an uncle, nor granted to her by a husband, nor weighed out to her by the whispers of a town. A woman's worth is the thing she decides in her own kitchen in her own lamplight with her own 2 hands, and it is hers the minute she decides it, and no man living or dead can give it to her or take it away. Leora Prescott had decided. She had decided on a May morning with a shovel in her blistered hands, and she had decided again in a courtroom, and she had decided again on a dance floor, and she would go on deciding every day of her life, because that was what it meant to be Leora Prescott, daughter of Jeremiah, woman of her own land, keeper of her own name. And that, in the end, is the only worth any person has ever had or will ever have in this world or the next. She was home, she was herself, and she was enough.